Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. Watch my video and subscribe to my channel. This is the most disgusting wedding that has transpired on Bold and the Beautiful. The Bold and the Beautiful reached a new low that no one saw coming. An event so vile, manipulative, and shamelessly orchestrated that fans everywhere dubbed it the most disgusting wedding in B&B history. A day dripping in betrayal, humiliation, and dark secrets that would scar the Spencer, Forrester, Logan, and Finnegan families for years. It began under the guise of love and reconciliation, but quickly unraveled into a grotesque spectacle that mixed revenge, blackmail, lust, and corporate warfare. A wedding planned not for union, but for control. And at the center of it all was a bride who wore white but carried a heart blackened by ambition. Luna Nozoa, freshly emerged from the chaos of her accidental drugging scandal, the Will Spencer debacle, and the lingering suspicion that her evil twin, Rana, might be real, decided to marry into the Spencer empire to shield herself from prosecution and destroy what remained of her enemy's happiness. And the groom? None other than Will Spencer himself, broken, manipulated, humiliated, still reeling from the assault, the hangover, the media circus, and the fractured remains of his relationship with Elektra, who had fled Los Angeles after uttering her 6 heartbreaking words, leaving Will vulnerable, emotionally bankrupt, and susceptible to Luna's venomous web of deceit. This wedding was not one born of romance, but of coercion, with Bill Spencer forced into a corner by Luna's threats to expose his role in paying Dr. Grace Buckingham $1 million for Liam's fake brain tumor surgery scam, the very scam that tore apart the Logan and Spencer families, left Hope reconsidering her relationship with Carter, and gave Sheila Carter a foothold into redemption. Ridge Forrester, ever the meddling patriarch, objected violently. Taylor Hayes seethed from the sidelines. Brooke Logan oscillated between horror and helplessness. And Steffi Forrester, still recovering from the trauma of Luna's deadly attack and Sheila's shocking act of heroism, was dragged into the ceremony by Finn, who insisted they must witness this union to understand their enemy's next move. The setting itself was grotesque. Forrester Creations' main showroom converted into a twisted fairy tale, draped in crimson roses and ominous black candles, a theme that felt less like a wedding and more like a ritual. With Sheila Carter awkwardly seated in the second row beside Deacon Sharp, their presence a constant reminder of how far morality had fallen in Los Angeles. Katie Logan wept silently, her dreams of reuniting with Bill crumbling as she watched the father of her child give a forced blessing, his jaw clenched, his soul in torment, while Hope Logan sat torn between supporting her half-brother and seething over Luna's calculated destruction of her family's legacy. And then the vows began, dripping with mock sincerity, Luna speaking of forgiveness, of healing the past, of binding the Spencers and Forresters for a new era, while Will's voice trembled, each word sounding like a nail in his own coffin, his eyes darting to the exit, to his father, to the ghost of Elektra's last gaze. The officiant, a disgraced minister hired secretly by Poppy at Luna's command, spoke in rushed tones as if to escape the stench of the moment, and then came the kiss. A kiss that turned stomachs, for it wasn't passion, it was conquest. Luna gripping Will's face with the same fingers that once caressed Zend after her so-called accidental drugging. The same fingers that manipulated Deacon, that framed Ridge, that whispered poison into Lee's ear when she faked her own death. Guests gasped, social media exploded, and in the shadows Rana, if she was real, was rumored to be watching, smirking, recording everything for her own dark return. The reception spiraled into chaos. Sheila tried to toast to second chances. Steffi snapped and threw champagne in her face. Finn intervened. Ridge threatened to shut down Forrester. Creations, if any profits, touched Luna's hands. Brooke clung to Hope as Carter confronted Bill over the financial blackmail that funded this abomination. And Ivy Forrester, freshly returned to Los Angeles, whispered to Liam that this could be the perfect moment to expose the entire scam. The fake MRI, the staged surgery, the $1 million lie that led to this union. As night fell, the newlyweds were whisked away, not to a honeymoon, but to a private jet heading to Monaco, another Spencer tax haven, where Luna vowed to rewrite the family fortune, rewrite history and erase Electra, erase the truth, erase every trace of the night she drugged Will. While back in Los Angeles, Lee Finnegan stared at a hidden file marked Project Moonrise, evidence that Luna's death had been faked months ago, evidence that this bride may not even legally exist, evidence that this wedding could be annulled, voided, obliterated, and yet, for now, it stood, a stain on the timeline of B&B, a union so revolting it united enemies, turned lovers to stone, and made even Sheila Carter look like a saint. This was the wedding that redefined Disgust, not because of who said I do, but because of what was lost in the process. Dignity, justice, love, and the last sliver of hope that Los Angeles could still produce a love story without corruption, coercion, and criminal conspiracy, leaving fans around the world screaming, tweeting, and sobbing. This is the most disgusting wedding that ever happened on Bold and the Beautiful. As the vile aftertaste of the most disgusting wedding in Bold and the Beautiful history lingered like a poison in the air, the next phase of the nightmare began to unfold. For the wedding was never meant to end with vows. It was a catalyst, a detonator carefully planted by Luna Nozua, whose smirk at the reception betrayed the true scale of her machinations. And by the time the Spencer jet touched down in Monaco, whispers had already rippled through Los Angeles. Whispers that the bride was not who she claimed to be, that Lee Finnegan had faked a death certificate months ago, that the woman in the white gown might in fact be a construct, a hybrid of Luna and her elusive twin Rana, or perhaps an imposter molded by Poppy's desperation and Lee's obsession with control. Meanwhile, in the wreckage of the reception hall, Bill Spencer confronted Ridge Forrester behind locked doors, a confrontation that echoed with decades of rivalry and recent betrayals. Ridge accusing Bill of selling his son's future to a manipulative predator. Bill spitting back that Ridge had left Liam to die in a hospital while he fought to save him, each man believing the other bore the greater sin, each man silently knowing they both played into Luna's hands. Katie Logan, heartbroken and nauseated, found herself drawn to the man she once loved, offering Bill a whispered promise to help him undo the mess if he could only admit the truth about the $1 million payment to Grace Buckingham. But Bill, shackled by blackmail and a twisted sense of paternal guilt, could only say, "Not yet." Hope Logan, torn between her lingering care for Liam and her shaky engagement to Carter Walton, stormed into the CEO office with Carter in tow, demanding that Forrester Creations sever all promotional contracts tied to the wedding, only for Eric Forrester to reveal that Luna had already transferred controlling shares to a shell corporation in Monaco, locking the fashion house into a 2-year collaboration with her charity that funneled profits directly into Spencer assets. This revelation triggered a seismic shift. Steffi Forrester, who had endured trauma after trauma at Luna's hands, collapsed into Finn's arms, her body trembling with rage and fear, while Finn himself, torn between medical ethics and marital loyalty, vowed to investigate Luna's medical history, convinced now more than ever that her earlier death had been faked under Lee's orders, that the same hands which once staged his own demise had been at work again. And then came the footage, a leaked video that hit social media like wildfire. Luna in her bridal suite moments before the ceremony, speaking into a secure line. Phase 1 is complete. Will is mine. Next, we take the shares. The voice on the other end, chillingly familiar to some, eerily distorted. But Carter froze when he heard it, because it sounded like his former flame Daphne Rose, the seductive schemer who had returned to Los Angeles to destroy his engagement with Hope, and now it seemed she and Luna were allied in a larger conspiracy, one that reached beyond romance into corporate sabotage. Ivy Forrester, secretly aligned with Bill after her quiet return, leaked the footage to Liam, who was recovering not just from his fake tumor, but from the emotional whiplash of seeing his brother forced into a union that mocked every notion of family. And for the first time since his surgery scandal, Liam felt a fire return to his veins. Not for Hope, not for Steffi, but for justice, for vengeance, for exposing the lie that had consumed his father's fortune and his brother's life. Meanwhile, on the jet, Luna poured champagne and whispered to Will of a future without Electra, without shame, without his father's shadow, only to watch him recoil, his eyes clouding with the dawning realization that he had been used as a pawn in a game he never chose to play, his mind flashing to the night in Deacon's apartment, the taste of tainted mints, the whispers of a woman who claimed to love him even as she plotted his downfall. Puppy called mid-flight, her voice tight with urgency. They know Luna. Lee's data are compromised. Rana is making moves. The bride's smile faltered for the first time, her manicured fingers tightening around her champagne flute until it cracked. Back in Los Angeles, Sheila Carter found herself in an unthinkable position. Defending Will, defending Bill, defending the Spencers, because for once in her chaotic life, she had not been the villain at the altar, and her attempts at redemption with Steffi began to solidify as the two women shared a tense, tearful moment in the Forrester kitchen where Steffi whispered, "You saved me once. Can you save him?" And Sheila, wiping her eyes, vowed to try. Ridge, desperate to reclaim control of the Forrester legacy, contacted international investigators. Taylor Hayes flew to Monaco under the guise of fashion diplomacy, but truly to sabotage the honeymoon, and Hope, restless and confused, began to reconsider everything: her loyalty to Carter, her lingering bond with Liam, her disgust for the cycle of manipulation that had once again ensnared her family. And still the wedding stood. Legally binding, morally bankrupt, a grotesque union of blackmail and bloodlines that threatened to rewrite the entire balance of power in Los Angeles. For this was not just a wedding, it was a heist in white satin, a con sealed with a kiss, a chess move that left pawns bleeding and kings on their knees. And as the Monaco sun rose on the newlyweds' first morning, Luna whispered into Will's ear a sentence that sent chills down his spine. "By the time they figure it out, you'll be too broken to leave." The aftermath of the most disgusting wedding in bold and the beautiful history spread like a virus across continents, its venom infecting boardrooms, bedrooms, and hospital wings from Los Angeles to Monaco, where the newlywed nightmare was only beginning to unfold. On the Spencer jet, while Spencer sat numb beside his bride, the clink of her champagne glass echoing like a prison bell in his mind as Luna Nozoa, if that was even her real name anymore, outlined her next phase with the precision of a general mapping out a siege. Control Spencer Publications by convincing the board he was unstable and needed a co-signing spouse. Use the fake charity partnership with Forrester Creations to launder shares into an offshore account and silence anyone who dared to unravel the truth, starting with Electra, whose heartbreaking departure had left a hollow shell ripe for manipulation. Yet, as the Mediterranean coastline glimmered below, a shadow emerged on the tarmac. Rana, rumored, whispered, denied by Lee, erased in documents, but now very real. Dressed in black, a mirror image of Luna, but with colder eyes and a scar along her jaw, watching as the couple descended the jet stairs, her phone capturing every move. Back in Los Angeles, Lee Finnegan's carefully guarded secret, Project Moonrise, was in danger of exposure, the file containing Luna's original death certificate, forged autopsy, and psychiatric evaluations that painted a picture of a young woman, fractured by ambition and maternal manipulation, hidden in a Forrester Creations server that Ivy Forrester and Carter Walton were now desperately trying to decrypt. Ridge Forrester, fueled by a rare mix of paternal rage and corporate fury, convened a midnight summit with Brooke Logan, Eric, and Steffi, revealing that Luna had already petitioned the Monaco courts for dual citizenship, a move that would shield her assets and marriage from annulment under U.S. law, while Taylor Hayes, operating behind the scenes, had booked herself into the same Monaco resort, claiming it was for Fashion Week diplomacy, but truly to intercept the newlyweds and gather evidence of coercion. Finn, torn between his wife's escalating fury and his own oath as a doctor, secretly contacted Bridget Forrester to cross-reference Luna's medical files with Grace Buckingham's fraudulent surgery notes, suspecting that the same web of lies that ensnared Liam had been spun to entrap Will, and their findings were damning. Identical forged MRI signatures, recycled hospital seals, a pattern of manipulation so blatant it tied Luna, Grace, and possibly Poppy together in $1 million fraud conspiracy that threatened to collapse both families' reputations. Meanwhile, Sheila Carter, having tasted a sliver of redemption after saving Steffi's life, found herself cornered in I.L. Giardino's back alley by Deacon Sharp, who demanded to know why she had attended the wedding without warning, her answer sending chills down his spine. "Because I've seen a union like that before when a predator chains a soul to keep them quiet." I recognized that look. I used to give it. And for the first time, Steffi began to see Sheila as something other than a monster, forming an uneasy alliance built not on trust, but on the mutual desire to destroy Luna's stranglehold on their world. Hope Logan, restless in Carter's penthouse, stared at old wedding photos of her and Liam, haunted by the memory of a man who once fought for her with everything he had, and wondered if her own silence had enabled this disaster, while Carter, increasingly obsessed with Daphne Rose's sudden reappearance and potential ties to Luna, began pulling surveillance footage from the wedding, noticing how Daphne vanished seconds before the vows were exchanged, and then, as the Monaco night deepened, Will reached his breaking point. On their first evening as husband and wife, in a penthouse overlooking the harbor, he locked himself in the bathroom, clutching his phone, scrolling through Electra's last message, those 6 heartbreaking words, and whispering to himself, "I made a deal with the devil," as Luna, dressed in silk and secrets, tapped at the door with the same gentle rhythm she once used to drug him, calling out promises of a future he knew would only bury him deeper. Rana, in the suite next door, pressed send on an encrypted email to Lee. "You thought you buried me. You thought you buried her. Now I'll bury you both." And thus began the second act of this grotesque saga, where the wedding was merely the opening shot in a war that would see mothers betrayed. Utters, brothers expose brothers, and Los Angeles's last illusions of love burned to ash beneath the Mediterranean sun. The honeymoon that followed the most disgusting wedding in bold, and the beautiful history, was supposed to be a retreat of luxury and celebration. But instead it became a gilded prison, a theater of cruelty where the bride, Luna Nozua, revealed layer by layer the scope of her venomous agenda, and the groom, Will Spencer, realized he had been lured not into marriage, but into captivity. The penthouse in Monaco's most exclusive cliffside resort shimmered with champagne towers and diamond chandeliers, yet its doors were locked from the outside, its staff replaced by Luna's hand-picked security, men who answered to a name Will had only heard whispered once before. Rana, the twin, the phantom, the shadow sisterly Finnegan swore never existed, now real, now deadly, now slipping through the suite's adjoining door in the dead of night, her scar catching the moonlight as she watched her sister sleep beside the man they had both agreed to use. "He doesn't even look like Liam," Rana murmured coldly, her voice dripping with contempt. "But he will serve the same purpose. Leverage bloodline access." Luna stirred and smirked, as though even in her dreams she could taste power, and Will, pretending to sleep, listened to every word, piecing together the puzzle of the past months, the fake mints, the drugging, the pressure from Poppy, the $1 million hush money, from his father, the rushed wedding, the sealed charity accounts, all threads in a net woven by sisters who should have been ghosts. Back in Los Angeles, the fallout from the wedding metastasized like a cancer. Rich Forrester, unable to sit idle, chartered a jet to Monaco with Brooke Logan by his side.